business. Thank you all for staying around. We do have a quorum. That's important per our bylaws. I'm John Whitehouse, by the way. I'm president. Joe is vice president, by the way. We have our secretary here, Nancy Fitzgibbon, and treasurer Susan Weller. I think you all know those folks. I wanted to say the photo in that picture was taken by Victor Mariano up on the Blue Ridge Parkway. It's an overlook you pass on your way to Mount Mitchell, and it's a sunrise picture. He did a great job. This was our agenda. We've already covered the guest speakers, and we're going to deal now with the activities of High Peaks over the last 12 months. So we'll try and do this fairly quickly. Joe already alluded to what we are. I think everybody here knows we're a 501c3. We were established in 2010, so we're 11 years old. This is actually our 11th annual meeting. Again, I'd like to thank Dr. Silver for his presentation, which I hope you all found really interesting. I know I did. And if you get a chance, have a chat with him. And I really want to thank Kevin, who got put on the spot just real in the last 24 hours to fill in for Rob. And Rob sends his apologies, but if you're not aware of this, they're shutting the park down almost every nice day due to a lack of parking places. So they need folks just to direct traffic, to stand down there at the Blue Ridge Parkway and close it and explain to people there's just not any parking left. So that's why they're so short-handed. Okay. All right, our primary activities are involved in hiking and also in trail maintenance. COVID shut us down for about 9 months, and it's only in the last, this year, early in the spring, that we began our hikes. And one of the first strolls we did was Kevin led and Carolyn Rakel led down to Lake James. I'd really like to thank Dennis Smith for leading all of the hikes so far this year and organizing them, and Carolyn Rakel for organizing the strolls. Both of those individuals would be happy to have other people step up and lead hikes. And the rules are really quite simple. Wherever you want to hike is fine. We'll give you some guidelines, some paperwork, some liability forms, that sort of thing. But basically, you have a favorite hike, go for it. We're limiting it to 12 people right now because of COVID. And that restriction will continue for a while still to come. Let's see. Oh, some of these pictures just explain the, starting on the left, that's Set Rock Creek Falls. The picture in the middle was a hike Dennis led up to Isa Mine. They're crossing a stream there, excuse me. And Duke should be able to tell us, I believe that's your grandson, Duke. Okay. By the way, I mean, you don't have to obviously go out on a High Peaks hike. We encourage you to hike anytime by yourself. Okay. All right. Sorry, I move around. Can you all hear me? Okay, thank you. Among the other hikes we've done, the Turks Caps are up on the Big Butt Trail. The picture on the top right is from the Isa Mine hike. If you haven't been to Isa Mine, it's a great big hole in the ground with a whole lot of history behind it. And there are folks alive today who have worked on that mine and can tell you about it. And I only know the history secondhand. There are a couple books about mining in Yancey County that are worth looking at. The lower left picture is from the Pinnacle. This was a stroll we did recently. This is Blue Ridge Pinnacle. It sits at the point where Buncombe County, McDowell County, and Yancey County all come together. And I don't know if you're aware of this, Tim, but there's a carving up there from 1864 with initials, and we don't know anything about it. I like to romanticize it and say it was actually a person trying to avoid the Confederate or Union draft who was hiding out on Pinnacle. I don't know if that's true, but it's definitely was carved in 1864. And then finally, the lower right is a hike that, again, I think Dennis led around the upper river loop, and that's the folks sitting on the bridge over the South Toe. Sandy and I went there about a week ago, and one side of that bridge is totally washed out from the floods that we had. So technically, you're not allowed to hike on South Toe Road right now beyond the gate. However, an exception's made for the Upper River Loop Trail where you can cross the road and then you're supposed to go on the trail itself. So again, that's a little bit of the flavor of the hikes that we've done so far this year. We had a brief pause in trail maintenance back in the spring of 2020. And then I think the Forest Service, Mount Mitchell, all realized that outdoor activity was the safest thing that you could do. So they allowed us to go ahead and continue trail work. And we've had a great turnout over the last year. We've increased our hours dramatically. We work in areas of the U.S. Forest Service around the Black Mountains, Mount Mitchell State Park, and we do a limited amount of work on the trails on the Blue Ridge Parkway, including Crabtree Falls Trail and the Blue Ridge Pinnacle Trail, or two, and the Mountains to Sea Trail, where it passes over Blue Ridge Parkway land. The photo on the lower left are some steps we put in this year at Big Butt, near the trailhead at Walker Knob Overlook. The middle picture is Joe staring into the abyss. That's the damage done to the lower river loop by the recent floods. The trail is gone. It's completely gone for about 30 feet, just totally washed out. And that bank is actually quite precarious. It's undercut. So we wound up cutting a trail about 10 feet inboard from the river so that the trail could be continued. We have found storm damage like this all around the Black Mountains. However, it's much worse over in Big Ivy, over past Barnardsville and Dillingham, where the road to Douglas Falls is totally washed out. We don't work that area, but we've seen some reports from it. The Carcinite sign, of course, is from the Black Mountain Crest Trail, probably the toughest trail that we have to work on. As far as access makes it really difficult. Some more of our trail work. We did a couple projects at Mount Mitchell State Park. We always enjoy being up there. The one on the left is what's called a turnpike. There's a very muddy area on what they call the Deep Gap Trail, what we call the Black Mountain Crest Trail, but it's on state park land. And to fix that, because it was a foot deep in mud, we simply created or started to create a turnpike where you lay in rocks, gravel, whatever, and try to build the trail up above the mud. So that's what's going on there. A lot of what we do year round is remove down trees. This tree in the upper right was on Duke section, and that's Rick measuring it. Often, you know, they're normally not that big, but we do get some large trees, and removing them can be difficult. Finally, the picture below is Elizabeth, who I think is here, taking the bark off a locust tree. This is down at the parking area across from the campground where we built another turnpike over a muddy area. Oops. And then finally, because we probably did more trail maintenance than, than anything else this year because hiking was shut down for a while, we've done some other projects as well. The pictures on the left and the right are from the Devil's Den Trail. Mike Williams created these signs about 5 years ago for the nature trail so campers can identify trees. And the ones we had there were getting old and cracked and moldy, so he made another set of 18 signposts that the crew then installed during late winter. We also resurrected a bridge and put a handrail on it to cover not so much a creek as a ravine that was difficult to cross. Finally, we do work sometimes outside of public lands. The photo below is Martha and Abby helping out the dig-in garden. The dig-in garden came to us because there's an electrical right-of-way right next to it, a power line right-of-way, and French Broad wanted to spray herbicides on it. Well, if you know dig-in, it's an organic garden, and it's abhorrent to them to have spraying right next to the garden. You do not have to have a right-of-way sprayed if you keep the growth below 3 feet. So those two went in with weed eaters and in half a day or more cut down all that just to make sure that there would be no spraying in the area. So we do help out other groups when we can. This is one of Jake's maps. And I wanted to refer to this because the discussion came up about the lands that have been added to Mount Mitchell State Park. And those lands that have been officially transferred are marked in pink. Here's Mount Mitchell State Park. These are two large allotments of land that a benefactor turned over to the state for Mount Mitchell. They more than double the size of the park, and the plan that was being referred to as long-term, what are we going to do with this land? What trails are we going to have? What campgrounds, fishing areas? For the first time, there will be fishing in Mount Mitchell State Park. So we're quite excited about this acquisition, and we're definitely hope that we'll be part of the planning process for what becomes of that land. Those maps, just to put a plug in, are available. Sandy will sell you one for $2. We have plenty of copies. Anyway, this is a segment of that map. We have a long-term project to improve the Mount Mitchell Trail. And Jake Blood, who's out west right now, is the person who's managing that project. We have had 5 recreational trail program grants, 4, over the last 5 years, where we bring in a commercial crew to work on different sections of the trail. And those sections are highlighted along there. This year, they're actually relocating a section of the trail right above Higgins Fall. And because the old section was so badly gullied, there was no way to repair it. So we hire a contractor, the American Conservation Experience. They employ AmeriCorps volunteers who come down, do backwoods camping, and work for weeks at a time on these trails. With this current contract, which will complete later this year, we'll have received almost $250,000 in grants from the recreational trail program. And you might wonder, where does that money come from? It actually comes from gasoline taxes collected by the federal government. 99.99% of that goes to road improvement, as you would expect. But a very small part of that is of the allotment given to the state. is allotted for trails. Most of that goes to off-road vehicle trails, and a little tiny percentage of that goes to hiking trails. The bidding process is competitive. We've competed 4 times, we've won 4 bids. So what this does is it really leverages what we can do as volunteers who go out 1 day a week. Now we can bring in a crew to work on really difficult problems in extremely remote areas where we just can't practically do a lot of trail work. We've also had the Southern Appalachian Wilderness Stewards who work primarily in wilderness areas do some work on the Deep Gap Trail. And through the Forest Service, we've had the North Carolina Conservation Corps do work on some of our trails in the Black Mountains. So we try to leverage everything that we can do. And then finally, talk a little bit about Mount Mitchell State Park. Since 2012, we've been the Friends of Mount Mitchell State Park. In that role, we support the park in any way that we can. It involves some trail work and other things that we are doing. We also manage the donation fund, which many people are surprised when they go up to Mount Mitchell State Park, and it's free. Doesn't cost you a dime. You can come and go as many times as you like. So we in the park have taken advantage of that, and we have donation boxes around where people provide funding just because, hey, we'd like to contribute to the work that's being done up here. Funds from that can run anywhere from $3,000 or $4,000 to I think we've collected well over $6,000 in a year. And all of that money gets funneled back into projects at Mount Mitchell. The donations were down this year because of COVID and the park being closed for some considerable time. Also, one of the donation boxes is at the restaurant, and the restaurant's closed, so that's 1/3 of our donations are not there. Anyway, we use some of that money that we receive from donations to do a special project up in Mount Mitchell. The Balsam Nature Trail is only 7/10 of a mile long. It's probably the most popular trail in the park because it's short, it's interpretive, it's reasonably easy to hike, and it's in a beautiful environment that you just don't find anywhere below 6,000 feet, we'll say, in the south. The trail has not received any major updates for 20 years. It's rough, rocky, dangerous. And so we worked on improving the trail, putting in what's shown on the lower left, what we call box steps, where we make steps and then we fill them with dirt and gravel to provide a safer means for climbing steep sections. Before we did this, there was a gully. When it rained, it was slippery. There's ice up there. All those things make the trail a bit hazardous to hike. To do this, for the first time this year, we worked with the American Hiking Society. They run a program called Volunteer Vacations, where, believe it or not, you pay them money so you can go camp primitively and do work. And they give you some food. You know, that's basically what it amounts to. So we had 5 of our AHS volunteers here for a week. We worked with them every day. The park partnered with us as well. And they all seemed to have a great time, even though it poured rain one day and everybody got soaked. So there's a picture at the bottom showing some of our volunteers along with Mike working on some box steps. The park provided a camping area free, and that was their eating area, cooking area. And I'd also like to say that we partnered again with the American Conservation Experience and used $9,000 of donation funds that we collect and manage for the park to pay them to come up and have a crew there for 2 weeks 1 week of which they worked hand in glove with our volunteers. So with 3 groups in there, we got a lot of work done. We're not finished up there, but there's still a pretty big improvement. The other side that's less visible and is our, well, over the last 7 years, we've helped Mount Mitchell have a online presence. I mean, the park system has a website, of course, and they have individual websites for each park. All of that gets managed out of Raleigh. So you can imagine to make any real change to the website, you have to go through bureaucracy in Raleigh. And it's difficult, let's put it that way. And we were sort of abhorred because on Mount Mitchell 6 years ago, there were no webcams. There was no way to look at it. If you pull up Mount Washington, there are 5 webcams up there that will show you conditions year round. So the first thing we did was put a webcam up in the classroom building very close to the summit and a weather station. Those are the highest webcam and weather station in the eastern US, much higher, 400 feet higher than Mount Washington. And we've expanded that network. We now have 4 webcams, 2 of which are on the mountain, and 2 of which, one in the Cane River Valley, one in the South Toe Valley, look at the mountain all the time so you can see what the weather conditions are. You want to go for a hike on Mount Mitchell, you look at Dennis's 7 Mile Ridge camera, it's totally socked in. Maybe you don't want to do it that day. So those are there. And we also have 3 weather stations, one of which is up near the summit. The issue of air pollution came up, and I wanted to mention we share the workroom in the back of the classroom building with the state air quality monitoring folks. And they monitor ozone, and I'm not sure what else, but I know they monitor ozone up there, and we've met their technicians several times. They use a cell phone network to communicate, but it's very unreliable for their data. We set up a Wi-Fi network that transmits a signal across the Cane River Valley, 8 miles, and is broadband. So we have Wi-Fi at the park. The park itself has only DSL, and it doesn't work all the time. So we have set up this independent network, and just in the last month, the air quality folks approached us and asked if they could use our network because it's more reliable than what the state provided. Someday the park will get Wi-Fi, someday. Anyway, the key to all this is the gentleman sitting there in front of the laptop, and that is Alan Orvitz. Alan's one of the founding members of High Peaks. He's our web guru and technical guru. And he's sitting at the base of the TIS tower, the Traveler Information Station, where we had just installed our 4th webcam, which is there on the left. It provides a view to the west of Big Butte and that section of the Black Mountains. But the primary function of it is an information station, so that when you turn off the parkway, you'll see a sign like that, and you tune your radio AM to 1630, and it provides a discussion of what is at the park and so on. We're a little bit at loggerheads because Raleigh decided to do the announcement, and it's terribly corny. You will learn that the best apple pie is up there at the restaurant. Sadly, it's closed. And if you've ever eaten at the restaurant, I'm sorry, it's not the best apple pie. It's also done in a very corny Southern accent. And so we're trying to get that changed, but the information is still there. So that thing is up and running. As all these things, it requires maintenance. And part of the understanding we made with the park is we would not increase their maintenance responsibilities. So we maintain this system as best we can year round. And the uptime's been pretty good. We are having a problem right now with not so much with that camera, but with the Wi-Fi transmitter on the tower. And our problem happens to be due to the park. Our problem are trees, and the trees keep growing, and they grow up into the radio beam, and suddenly we can't, suddenly we lose communication. And of course, we're not allowed to cut down trees, so we're working on other technical solutions so that we do not snip a single tree, is our mantra. Okay, having covered those three topics, the next thing is more along the business lines. This is our financial situation. And Susan, I owe all this slide to, and keeps our financial situation in a great stead. First of all, we have what are called restricted and unrestricted funds. Restricted funds are those collected and it can only be used for certain purposes. We have two funds in that category. Unrestricted are the general funds that we operate with. The first is our Mount Mitchell Donation Fund. The funding, as I said, comes from donation boxes, but when groups run like the assault on Mount Mitchell, the bicycle race, or the foot race, they ask the park to provide services up there, which the park does. They have permits to do this, and they typically make donations to the park. The park staff is not allowed to accept donations anywhere in the state for obvious reasons. So there has to be a third party, a friends group that collects the money. And the way it works is we have these donation boxes. They have two locks on them. One the park holds a key to, and one we hold a key to. So like last week, Sandy and Susan went up and met with park staff. They unlocked the boxes, took the money and counted it together and agreed on the amount. And then it was brought to the bank where it was put in a specific fund for that use. Because of COVID, our trail fund has, our Mount Mitchell fund has gone down a bit. Plus we've had some large expenses this year. I mentioned the $9,000 for the Balsam Nature Trail. We also bought 5 radios that the park needed. And these radios are so that the park can easily follow traffic in the emergency networks, for example, 911. There have been a lot of lost hikers, and seems to be a spike in that over the last year. And there was no easy way for park personnel to know when they're not on site what was going on. So every ranger has one of these radios which alarms if there's a general 911 alarm. By the way, some of the hiker emergencies were hikers who called 911 and said, "I'm tired, I can't go on, come rescue me." And unfortunately, park staff has to go hold their hand and tell them, "I'm sorry, you need to walk out. We can't carry you out. You need to walk out." But then there are some legitimate emergencies. I mean, there was one on the Crest Trail that we put on our Facebook page about a hiker who broke his ankle, I think it was, and the great search and rescue teams here in Yancey went way up on the Crest Trail and carried this person out on a stretcher to a point where they could be transferred to an ATV. Anyway, enough about that. Our trail fund went up significantly, 20%, 21%, because we had a fundraiser last year. Now, the trail fund was established specifically for our RTP projects, our recreational trail projects. The state is very generous. They say, "Here, we'll give you $60,000 to work on this trail, but there's a catch. You have to pay the contractor first. So it has to be money that you spend. And then you get to wait 2 to 6 months for us to pay you back." So that becomes a problem. Where do we get this money? in order to pay the contractor and then be able to sit on it and so on. So we worked out an arrangement with our bank where we have this trail fund and we buy a CD, and the CD is held by the bank. You know, it's certificate of deposit, 1 year long, pays minuscule interest, but based on that CD, we can then borrow money from the bank up to the limit of the CD. So that allows us to pay the contractor, borrow the money, pay interest until the state gets around to reimbursing us. So far, that's worked fine over the years. And thanks to Susan's management and Jake's management of the project. In any case, we're building that trail fund up so that right now we have to pay our contractor in chunks. We can't pay them the 60,000. We have to pay them 20,000 at a time. And ACE, our contractor's been very good about that. They're very cooperative. They understand. So they've had no issue with that. It just can take a year for them to get their money. Okay, those are restricted funds and they're in good stead right now. The unrestricted funds are the things that we collect from dues, general donations, not specifically donated to the park or the trail fund. And we had 160% increase in our bank account over the last year. I'm not sure I can fully explain that. Susan and I have talked about it. We've had some sizable donations. We've had some folks buy lifetime memberships, which is a one-time chunk of money. What else did we? Yes, and we've had a good sale of merchandise. We're at the crafts fair, we sell it here, we sell it online. So all that's helped. And what does that pay for? Well, first of all, the first person in line, since we don't pay taxes, we're a 501c3, the first person in line is our insurance company. We have to have insurance because we run hikes and there's liability. We have directors and officers that also require insurance. It's not a big expense, but it's an expense. Then we have to pay for our computer services, our website being hosted by a commercial outfit. Then we have to buy the equipment that we install and replace it. You know, it wears out, it breaks, whatever. So we have those expenses. And then there's a multitude of miscellaneous stuff. We buy trail equipment, tools, and so on from time to time, all purchased out of that fund. So that's the good news on that part. And then let's see, the line of credit are the loans that I was talking about. In the past, we had a line of credit secured by a CD from our Mount Mitchell donation fund. We no longer have that. We don't need that anymore. So our only CD this year and our only loan will be against the trail fund. Any questions about financing, by the way? Okay, I'd like to get to election of officers, which is probably a moot point at this point because we've already, most of you have already voted. If you haven't, please give Susan your ballot. We currently have 7 board members and they're listed here. We have term limits. Terms are 2 years and you're limited to 3. So Nancy, who has done a fantastic job for 6 years as a board member and as our secretary, had to rotate off. Since we have 7 members, normally there are 4 up for re-election or 3. This year there are 3. And I have pictures of our candidates here. Martin Stankus at the top is running for re-election, what will be his final term. And Duke Rose is running for re-election again, will be his final term. If you vote for Duke, you get Katie. So it's a package. And for Abby, I couldn't find a good picture except one on the trail, on the Buncombe Horse Ranch Trail when she was knee deep in mud. but that's probably a good picture. Anyway, I'll reiterate, we elect a board of directors who then turns around and elects officers. It's a little bit different. It's more like a commercial corporation board where the board of directors decides who the officers of the corporation are. After this election, we will meet probably either in October or November, and we will elect board officers for the coming year. Okay, any questions about the slate of candidates since you've already voted? Excellent. All right. Susan, you haven't counted ballots, have you? No. She's counting them now. Okay. That concludes the presentation today. I again appreciate everybody who stayed for the business meeting. Are there any questions, for me, Tim, Kevin, anybody at this point? Since it's sunny, you probably are all dying to get outside anyway. Okay, it's unanimous. All right, very good. Thank you, Susan. And thank you, everybody, for coming. And I'll make one last point. We do have a board meeting every month. We've been doing it virtually on Zoom. I will try to remember and put it on Facebook in case anybody would like to attend. We'll always welcome visitors. When we had them in person, it's always an open meeting. So if you can join us, that would be great. Okay, thank you all.